Hey everybody, Sean here from VidGamiac.com. Here we are today back in the wild update for Minecraft, going for the With Our Powers Combined achievement. This is to obtain all three variants of the froglight item in your inventory at the same time. What you need to do is you need to make sure you head over to a swamp biome, preferably at nighttime, and then you're going to want to play this on easy or higher for this part. Make sure you keep your eyes open for this type of mob in the form of the slime. You want to make sure you kill them and then go for their drops in the form of slime balls. You are going to need a lot of these, so make sure you try to grab as many as you can. Alternatively, you can also grab slime from llamas. However, that's going to be a way longer process, so might as well go for this method. Once you have enough slime balls, feel free to set the difficulty back to peaceful, as we're only going to turn it on whenever we need it to have an enemy encounter. In addition to your slime balls, you're also going to need some stuff to get to the nether, so make sure you grab some obsidian and of course a flint and steel to light it. We are going to need to build quite a few nether portals, so either get a bunch of obsidian or make sure you have a diamond pickaxe in hand so you can recycle whatever obsidian you do have. So you do need to have the obsidian in hand or a bunch of buckets of lava and water if you prefer the bucket method. Nonetheless, once you have your slime balls and your portal materials, it's time to move on to the next step, which is also going to take place at the swamp. So you're going to want to look for this new type of mob in the form of the frog. Now, we are going to be reusing the same swamp where we did our slime farm, so this is going to be a normal swamp, and the type of frog here is going to be the brown frog, which is going to be the temperate climate frog. Now, unfortunately, as of this update, you cannot tame frogs. However, you can lure them with slime. So make sure you have a slime ball in hand, and you should be able to pull them. So what you want to do next is you want to make sure you set up your nether portal and light it. We're going to need to pull one or a few of these frogs with us into the nether. So set up and light your portal, and make sure you switch over to the slime ball, and make sure you try to lure one through the portal, and then once you get one or a few on the other side, make sure you make the jump with them, and then your goal is to get into the nether. Once you are in the nether with your frogs, you are going to want to change the difficulty back to easy if you turn it back down to peaceful earlier. We are going to need a hostile mob available for this next part in the form of the magma cube, so make sure you keep that in mind. Be a little careful when you are in the nether. The frogs are going to be vulnerable to both lava and magma blocks, so make sure you don't have them accidentally step in one of those. Make sure you lure them over to a spot where you can find a magma cube, and your goal is to try to break the magma cubes down to their smallest form. So if you find a medium or a large magma cube, make sure you break it up, and then once you have the magma cube at its smallest form, make sure you lure the frogs over here. The frog should eat the smallest form of magma cube, and then it should spit out the item we are looking for in the form of the froglight. And for this specific frog, which is going to be the temperate frog, they are going to drop the ochre froglights whenever they eat a magma cube. So once you have at least one of those, make sure you make it back to the other side. You do not need to take your frogs with you, so feel free to abandon them if you want. Once you jump back to the other side, make sure you recycle your portal or move on to the next step if you don't plan on reusing the obsidian. Now, when it comes to the other froglight variants, basically what determines the froglight drop is going to be whatever type of frog you bring with you into the nether to eat a magma cube. So we are going to need to basically try to find the other two types of frogs. So the easiest way to do this is actually through breeding, and you're going to need two things for this next step. You're going to reuse the slime that we found earlier, and you are also going to want to make a few buckets. So make sure you get to mining and smelting some iron. I am going to recommend that you have at least a handful of buckets for this one. And then once you have those two things, we're going to move on to the breeding process. So as mentioned before, you're going to use slime in order to pull frogs. However, you are also going to use slime balls in order to breed them. So what you want to do is want to make sure you pull a minimum of 2 frogs over to the shoreline. Of course, having more is going to make this next step a lot quicker. And you're going to feed 2 frogs a slime ball each, and basically that will have them enter love mode. Once the process is complete, one of the frogs is going to head to the nearest body of water, which is going to be the actual swamp water in this situation, and they're going to spawn this block known as the frog spawn. So basically that's going to be the equivalent of frog eggs, and of course you can do this to multiple frogs, so make sure you try to love mode all of your nearby frogs, and then that should get a bunch of frog spawn in one congregated spot. And of course you can reuse the same frogs, you are just going to have to wait a while. It's just like breeding any other animal in this game. As for the way frog spawn is going to work, basically they are going to hatch after about 6 to 10 minutes, and they should hatch into anywhere from 2 to a half dozen tadpoles. Tadpoles are going to be an aquatic creature that do need water to survive, so make sure you do keep that in mind. If one ends up in land, make sure you nudge it back into the water. Tadpoles are obviously going to grow up to become frogs. However, we are going to need to capture them in order to change them to our different frog variants. To capture a tadpole, that's where our buckets are going to come in handy. You are going to first need to fill up an empty bucket with water, and then with a water bucket, you can capture a tadpole to get a bucket of tadpole. And you're going to want to have about a handful of these. Once you have all of your captured tadpoles, make sure you pack up shop, and we're going to leave the swamp, so make sure you take your slime balls and your nether portal supplies with you. Our next stop along the way is going to be any type of warm biome, so the obvious candidates for these can be deserts, jungles, savannas, etc. And once you find one of these, you are going to want to set up camp here. So once you find a spot to settle down in your appropriate biome, you're going to want to dig out a hole. You want to make it 2 by 2, and then you want to make it pretty deep. So make sure you dig it about 3 to 4 blocks deep, and we are going to place our tadpoles in here. So the way tadpoles are basically going to work is they are going to eventually grow up to become frogs, and what color frog they are going to be is going to be based on whatever climate of biome they are going to be under, which is the reason why we took them with us. So once you have your hole dug out, make sure you empty half of your tadpoles into the hole, and then we are going to basically wait until they become frogs. You can either sit here and wait, or you could speed up the process by feeding them slime balls. Every time you feed them a slime ball, they're going to increase the speed in which they are going to mature. So make sure if you have a ton of slime balls, you can just spam these in order to get them to become frogs right away. So for the warm climate biomes, if you happen to have a tadpole reach maturity here, you're going to get a white frog, which is going to be the warm climate frog. Now, once you have your frogs ready, we are going to reestablish our nether portal, so make sure you try to pop it down somewhere flat where you can lead them through super easily. So make sure you find a nice stretch of land, and then of course set up your portal and light it. Once you light it, make sure you clear a path for your frogs, and then make sure you lure them with whatever slime balls you still have left, and we're going to make the jump into the nether, and we're going to be on the lookout for yet another magma cube. So here is going to be our portal. We're going to light it up, and then we're going to build a nice handy dandy staircase from our pond all the way up to the portal. Hopefully you set it up close enough where you won't lose your frogs, because obviously we don't want to go through the process of breeding them again, but we did make backups in case that scenario did happen, and it's good to have a couple of frogs in case one accidentally takes a spill, so make sure you do keep that in mind. And then we're going to try to get these guys with us into the nether, and then on to our magma cube search. Of course, do remember, whenever we are going for magma cubes, we're going to have to turn the difficulty back up to easy if we turn it back down to peaceful. So I do recommend switching between the two difficulties whenever you are switching between combat and actual crafting and breeding. So make sure you do keep that in mind. But once you establish the magma cube location, you're going to want to lure your frogs over there, and you're going to do the same process as last time. If you have a larger size cube, make sure you break it down into its smallest form, and then you want to make sure you have the frog close by in order to eat it, and then it should spit out our next froglight. And of course, since these are going to be a different variant of frog, we're going to get the different variant of froglight. So here's our magma cube right here, and then we're going to break it up. First into the medium size, and then once more to get into the small size. Lure our frog over. Of course, be careful not to die either. The frog should eat it and spit out our next froglight in the form of the pearlescent froglight. That should be 2 out of the 3. Feel free to hop back to the overworld, change the difficulty back down to peaceful, and recycle the portal if appropriate. Of course, if you do have a stockpile of obsidian, you can just move on to the next step, which is going to be the third and final frog variant and the last froglight that we need. Now, do keep in mind you can actually find white frogs in the natural environment as they can spawn in mangrove swamps, and mangrove swamps are going to be a warm climate. However, the third type of frog is going to be very rare to find naturally out in the wild, so this one is going to pretty much require breeding unless you get super lucky, which is going to be the green type of frog, which is going to be the cold climate frog. So make sure you take your slime balls, tadpoles, and portal materials up to a cold environment. The best candidate is going to be snowy mountaintops. However, you can also use glaciers or the ocean if you have those available to you. However, obviously it's going to be way easier to set up camp here since you don't have to deal with any ice nor water. Make sure you dig out your hole and then make sure you pop your tadpoles inside. Now, if you aren't going to use the Instamature method, I do recommend bringing some torches with you. The reason for that is you don't want the pond where your tadpoles are incubating to freeze over, so do make sure you pop some torches nearby in order to keep them safe. But of course, it is going to be way easier to just use the Instamature method. So make sure you feed them those slime balls, and then they should grow up to be our last frog type, which is going to be the green frog. So once you have your frogs, again, make sure you try to set up your portal, preferably somewhere flat where you can lure them through. Build a staircase from the hole to your portal, and then lead them into the nether. And then we're going to go for one last magma cube hunt. So again, make sure you turn the difficulty back up to easy if you set it back down to peaceful for this step. And then we just need to find one more magma cube, break it down to its smallest component, and then get this type of frog to eat it. And that should spit out our last froglight we need. This froglight is going to be the verdant froglight, and having this in your inventory at the same time as the previous two, so the ochre froglight as well as the pearlescent froglight, should get you the achievements. Of course, you do have to have all three of them at the same time, so hopefully you didn't lose any of the previous two. But once all three are in your inventory, you should be good for the achievements. This one is going to be for 30 gamer score, and that's all there is to it.